Japan doesn't just make better kitchens. It makes kitchen tools so logical that the moment you see them, you'll wonder how you've lived without them. A rectangular pan that rolls a perfect layered omelet in under 2 minutes, every single morning. A ceramic bowl with ridged walls that grinds whole spices into a fine paste in seconds. And a rice cooker so advanced it adjusts automatically for perfectly cooked rice every single time. These aren't professional chef tools. They're everyday kitchen ideas that slot straight into your daily routine and immediately make it better. Today, we're counting down 15 Japanese kitchen ideas that instantly make life better. Watch until the end because number 15, cooking chopsticks, are a tool so versatile that most Japanese home cooks haven't needed tongs or a spatula in years. Number 1, tamagoyaki pan. Most people make scrambled eggs or a flat omelet because that's what a round pan allows. Japan looked at the same ingredient and designed an entirely different pan to get an entirely different result. The tamagoyaki pan is rectangular. That shape exists for one reason. It lets you roll thin layers of seasoned egg over each other into a tight, layered log that holds its shape when sliced. You pour a thin layer of beaten egg into the pan, let it set slightly, roll it to one end, pour another layer underneath, and roll again. Each layer bonds to the one before it. The result is a firm, layered omelet with a slightly sweet flavor that slices cleanly into portions. It takes about 2 minutes once you know the technique. The pan itself is compact, heats evenly across the entire flat surface, and produces something that looks and tastes completely different from anything a round pan can make. Number 2. Suribachi grinding bowl. A standard Western mortar and pestle has a smooth interior. You press ingredients against it and grind in circles, which works eventually but takes significantly longer than it needs to, and leaves more residue behind than you'd expect. A Suribachi works differently. It's a Japanese ceramic grinding bowl with a ridged interior, rows of fine grooves etched across the entire inner surface. When you press spices or seeds against those ridges with the wooden pestle, they catch and break apart almost immediately rather than sliding around a smooth surface. The result is a finer, more consistent grind achieved in a fraction of the time. Whole spices become powder in under a minute. Seeds grind into paste without leaving half of them whole at the bottom of the bowl. It's a tool that's existed in Japanese kitchens for over 1,000 years. Because the ridged interior is simply a better design than a smooth one, and that difference is immediately obvious the first time you use it. Number 3, rice washing bowl. Rinsing rice before cooking it removes excess surface starch, which is what causes it to clump together into a sticky, gummy mass rather than cooking into separate, fluffy grains. Most people rinse rice in the pot they're cooking it in or in a colander, where small grains fall straight through the holes. Japan made a dedicated bowl specifically for this task. A rice washing bowl has a built-in strainer rim with drainage holes, sized precisely to let water out while keeping every grain of rice inside. You fill it, agitate the rice with your hand, and tip it to drain without losing a single grain. Some versions have a rubbed interior surface that cleans the rice more thoroughly through the washing motion. Others have measurement markings on the inside so you portion and wash in the same vessel. It's a single-purpose tool that does one thing perfectly and makes a noticeable difference to the texture of cooked rice every single time. If you're enjoying this so far, go ahead and tap like. It tells YouTube you want more of Japan's clever, everyday innovations. And if you love discovering things you didn't even know existed, hit subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this list. Trust me, the next ones are even smarter. Number 4. Multifunction rice cooker. A basic rice cooker applies heat and switches off. It works, but it treats every variety of rice the same way, which is why results vary more than they should depending on what type you're cooking. Japan's multifunction rice cooker does considerably more than that. It has dedicated settings for white rice, brown rice, sushi rice, porridge, and mixed grain rice, each one calibrated to the specific water absorption and cooking time that variety requires. Beyond rice, it steams vegetables, slow cooks stews and soups, bakes bread, and keeps food warm for hours without drying it out. The keep warm function alone makes it genuinely useful. Food cooked in the morning stays at the correct serving temperature all day without reheating, without drying out, and without any further attention. It replaces a steamer, a slow cooker, and a standard rice cooker with a single appliance that takes up the footprint of one and outperforms all three. Number 5. Strainer pot lid. Draining pasta or rice usually means hunting for the colander, burning your hands holding the pot at an angle, or balancing the lid slightly open while boiling water pours out unevenly. It's an awkward process that every kitchen deals with every single time something needs draining. Japan built the colander directly into the lid. A strainer pot lid looks like a standard glass or metal lid but has a row of drainage holes running around the rim. When your pasta or vegetables are done, you hold the lid firmly against the pot and tip it toward the sink. The water drains cleanly through the holes while everything inside stays in the pot. No colander to retrieve, no second pair of hands needed to hold anything, no balancing act over a hot stove. It's a direct replacement for a standard pot lid that adds one function requiring no extra space, no extra equipment, and no extra steps. You already needed a lid. This one just does more. Number 6. Noodle measuring tool. Cooking pasta or noodles for one person consistently ends the same way. Too much or too little with no reliable way to tell the difference until it's already in the pot and it's too late. Japan made a tool specifically for this. A noodle measuring tool is a flat disc or paddle with holes of different sizes, each calibrated to the exact bundle of dry noodles that produces a single, standard, or large serving. You push a bundle of spaghetti or ramen through the relevant hole until it fits snugly, and that's your portion. No scales. No comparing a handful in your fist to the vague description on the packet. No guessing. It works with any long dry noodle, hangs on a hook beside the stove, and costs almost nothing. It's the kind of tool that solves a problem so consistently and so quietly that after a week of using it, you can't remember why you ever did it any other way. Number 7. Benriner Mandolin Slicer. Getting vegetables sliced to a consistent thickness by hand requires either exceptional knife skills built over years of practice or a lot of patience and an acceptance that the results will always be slightly uneven. Most home cooks have neither. The Benriner Mandolin is Japan's solution, and it's been a standard home kitchen tool there for decades. You run a vegetable across the flat blade and it produces a perfectly uniform slice every single time at whatever thickness you've set. Cucumbers, carrots, cabbage, daikon, onions, all sliced to the exact same thickness across the entire vegetable in seconds. Consistent thickness matters more than most people realize. Vegetables cut to the same thickness cook evenly at the same rate. Salads with uniform slices dress more evenly. Gratins and layered dishes look and cook completely differently when every piece is identical. The Benriner is compact, adjustable, and produces results in seconds that knife work alone takes years to replicate consistently. Number 8. Kitchen Splatter Guard. Frying anything without a splatter guard turns the stovetop, the surrounding counter, and sometimes the wall behind it into a grease-covered surface that takes longer to clean than the meal took to cook. A kitchen splatter guard is a fine mesh screen that sits over the pan while food is frying. Steam and heat pass freely through the mesh while oil droplets are caught before they leave the surface of the pan entirely. Japan produces splatter guards with finer mesh, sturdier frames, and folding handles that store flat in a drawer. Some Japanese versions have a slight dome shape that increases clearance above the food, letting steam circulate properly rather than condensing and dripping back into the pan. The stovetop stays clean. The surrounding surfaces stay clean. The guard itself wipes down in seconds because the mesh catches droplets on the surface rather than letting them bake on. It costs almost nothing and makes frying something you don't have to clean up after for the next 20 minutes. Number 9. Oversink Dish Rack. After washing dishes, most people slide a drying rack onto the counter beside the sink. The dishes drip, the mat underneath stays permanently damp, and the counter loses a sizable chunk of usable surface to a rack that sits there all day whether it's full or empty. Japan moves the rack directly over the sink. An Oversink dish rack spans the basin so everything drains straight down into the sink below rather than pooling on a mat beside it. The counter stays completely clear. There's no damp surface to deal with, and the rack itself takes up zero counter space because it sits above the basin that was already there. Dishes go in, drip dry, and are ready to put away without touching the counter at all. In compact Japanese kitchens where every centimeter of counter space matters, this solution became standard for a reason. One small repositioning of a tool most kitchens already have, and the counter opens up completely. Number 10. Drop lid. Most pot lids do one thing. They sit on the rim of the pot, trap steam, and keep heat in, which works fine until you're cooking something in liquid that needs even heat distributed all the way through rather than just bouncing off a lid sitting several centimeters above the food. Japan solved this with the drop lid. Instead of resting on the pot's rim, it sits directly on top of the food inside the liquid. It keeps everything submerged, distributes heat evenly across the entire surface, prevents ingredients from floating or shifting around, and allows just enough steam to escape so nothing boils over. It comes in wood, silicone, and stainless steel. It's used for simmered vegetables, fish, braised meat, and any dish where keeping ingredients in constant contact with the cooking liquid produces a better result. It's a tool that's been in Japanese kitchens for centuries because it produces a fundamentally better result than cooking without one every single time. Number 11. Sink Drain Net. The kitchen drain is one of those areas that gets avoided rather than maintained. Food particles get through, moisture sits on them, bacteria multiply, and within days the drain becomes one of the most unpleasant spots in the kitchen to deal with. Japan prevents it entirely with a disposable mesh net placed directly over the drain. The net catches everything: rice grains, vegetable scraps, tea leaves, anything that would otherwise pass through the standard strainer and begin breaking down in the pipe below. When it's full, you lift it out, drop it in the bin without touching the contents, and replace it with a fresh one. The drain stays clear, the pipe below stays odor-free, And the part of the cleaning process that most people avoid for as long as possible takes about 3 seconds and requires no contact with anything unpleasant. It's one of the cheapest products in any Japanese convenience store, and it eliminates one of the most consistently avoided tasks in the kitchen entirely. Number 12. Retractable kitchen tap. A fixed kitchen tap does one thing. It puts water where the tap is, which is fine until you're trying to fill a pot that's sitting on the stove, rinse produce in the far corner of the sink, or clean the basin itself without contorting around the fixed head. Japan's retractable kitchen tap solves all of that with a pull-out spray head that extends far enough to reach anywhere in the sink and beyond. You pull the head out, it locks into the extended position, and you direct the water exactly where it needs to go. A toggle on the head switches between a focused stream and a wide spray depending on what you're doing. When you're done, the head retracts automatically on a weighted hose that pulls it back into position, filling a large pot on the stove beside the sink, rinsing every corner of a large roasting tray, washing produce held over the basin at arm's length. All of it becomes completely effortless with a tap that goes where the water needs to be rather than making everything come to it. Number 13. Dish drying cabinet. Counter space in a kitchen is always the limiting factor. There's never quite enough of it, and a drying rack sitting beside the sink permanently takes up a portion of it, whether it's full of dishes or completely empty. Japan moves the drying rack off the counter entirely by building it into the cabinet above the sink. A dish drying cabinet is a wall-mounted unit that opens to reveal a rack inside. Washed dishes go directly into the cabinet from the sink below, drain through the rack, and dry in the airflow of the open cabinet. When they're dry, the cabinet closes and the dishes are already stored. The counter below stays completely clear. There's no separate rack to wipe down, no damp mat to deal with, and no intermediate step between washing and storing. It combines two separate pieces of kitchen infrastructure, a drying rack and a storage cabinet, into one wall-mounted unit that uses space that was already being used for nothing else. Number 14. Knife sharpening system. A dull knife is one of the most overlooked problems in most kitchens. You adapt to it gradually, applying more pressure, sawing instead of slicing, until cutting anything becomes more effort than it should be. Most people don't realize how dull their knives have become until they use a sharp one. Japan's two-stage ceramic sharpening system fixes this in under a minute. The first stage has a coarser ceramic rod that reshapes the blade edge. The second stage has a finer rod that polishes and refines it. You draw the blade through each stage a few times at the correct angle and the edge is restored completely. No oil required, no special skills, no sending knives away or buying expensive electric sharpeners. Japanese home cooks sharpen their knives regularly as a standard kitchen habit, rather than an occasional event, which is why Japanese kitchen knives stay sharp for years rather than slowly becoming useless through neglect. Number 15. Cooking chopsticks. Most Western kitchens have a spatula, a pair of tongs, a slotted spoon, and a ladle taking up space in a utensil pot beside the stove. Japan replaces most of that with a single tool that does all of it better. Cooking chopsticks, called Suribachi, are significantly longer than eating chopsticks, typically around 30 to 35 centimeters, which keeps hands safely away from heat while frying, boiling, or grilling. They flip individual pieces of meat without puncturing them the way a fork does. They plate food with a precision that no tongs can match. They stir, separate, taste, transfer, and arrange, all with the same tool that requires no swapping between utensils mid-cook. Because the tips are thin and precise, you handle delicate ingredients like fish, tofu, and eggs without breaking them, something a spatula rarely achieves cleanly. Japanese home cooks learn to use suribachi as their primary cooking tool from childhood. Once the technique clicks, almost every other utensil in the drawer starts to feel unnecessary. If you want to see more amazing things Japan is doing better than the rest of the world, then like and subscribe. And make sure to watch the video on your end screen. It's packed with even more life-improving things.